And so her first round of chemotherapy, she didn't survive. And I honestly believe it's because she had no vision left. Her belief said, cancer means death. I'm going to check out now before it gets too hard. So that's the power of having a vision. It can pull you. And how many of you have heard of people that have been diagnosed with cancer, stage 3 or stage 4, and had a full recovery? How many people have heard these stories?
Yes.
Me too. So I know it's possible. My only regret was that I never shared that with her. That it doesn't have to be that way. But the bottom line is, you and your team need to sit down and find out what does the future hold for you guys? What are you going to build together, regardless of what the past has been like, regardless of what your present is like? Where are you going? What are you going to build together? Who are you going to be? So what I'd like to do is write a note in your journal. By when are you going to sit down with your team and create a compelling future? One that inspires you, one that gets you up early and keeps you up late at night. You know what I'm talking about? That type of enthusiasm for life. Enthusiasm for what the future holds. Like, how many of you have ever just given 1,000% when you knew vacation was coming? Or Christmas was coming? Or when you knew you were working towards something tangible and real that was just off in the distance? That's the power of vision. So write in your notes, by when will you sit down with your team and give yourself that gift? And if you already have one, maybe it's time to sit back down together and talk about what that vision really means. What it really means, not that it's just a statement, but it's a purpose, it is a way of life. Now, once you have vision in place, it's not enough just to dream and think and imagine and envision a better future. That's not enough. Because we all dream, true?
Mm-hmm.
We all can think about and hope for and do all that kind of stuff, but that's not enough. It's the first piece, but it's not enough. So once you know what you're building together and where you're going together, the second thing you must have is a set of operating principles. We call them team agreements. Team agreements are basically a stand of what we're going to hold each other to and what we can expect from one another as we pursue that vision. Things like we agree to no self-grouping or office gossip. Because gossip destroys a team faster than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
The spreading of perceptions, not reality, perceptions. And allowing that cancer to fester through your practice until relationships are destroyed and they're distant and people are no longer working together. They're working against each other. How many of you have ever been in a practice where it felt like people were working against you? So team agreements are a code of conduct. What do we need to be able to expect from one another as we pursue this dream? Things like we agree to be on time. We agree to start our day on time and to end our day on time. We agree to support each other at 100%, even when we're tired.
No, recharge.
Even when we need recharging. But yeah, and holding yourself to that even when no one else does. See, it is so disappointing sometimes, and it honestly breaks my heart sometimes to see someone compromise their values because they're upset with someone else. Someone says, well, I'm not going to keep that agreement if they're not going to. Why should I clean rooms if she doesn't have to? I'm not going to make reactivation calls. No one else is making them, so I'm not going to make them. And again, we allow what other people do or don't do to affect our own personal integrity. So if your life is only representative of everyone else's expectations of you, you are going to be miserable.
Yes.
You're going to be miserable. Because how many of you have ever compromised your values and your beliefs, and after you did it, felt guilty, wanted to beat yourself up, knew, even as you were making the decision, you knew it was wrong? You knew it was in direct violation of what you believed and what you valued, and you did it anyway. And afterwards, you carried the burden of guilt because you knew you compromised yourself because of someone else. How many of you have ever had that experience? I think we all have. So when you set in place team agreements in your practice, the first person you must coach to uphold those agreements is you. Is you. You don't put those agreements in place and then start policing everybody to say, well, you didn't keep that agreement, and you didn't keep that agreement, you didn't keep your agreement, you didn't keep your agreement. No. You wake up every day and you say, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? In one of Tony's programs, he talks about Dr. J, and I'm not that familiar with Dr. J, to be perfectly honest. He was a little bit before my time. Sorry. A little bit before me. But Dr. J operated from a very simple belief, and this was one of the things. I mean, there were so many things over the past several years that I've learned from Tony that I just filed away in my Rolodex, and things that come up that I think about that I use to interrupt my patterns when I start to get pulled off track, or I start to get influenced by someone else that I don't want to be influenced by, or influenced by the world, whatever the case may be. Dr. J, from what I understand, I'm not that familiar with him, but he was a phenomenal basketball star. One of the best ever. Michael Jackson, in the history books, not history books, Guinness Book of World Records, Michael Jackson was one of the most successful performers of all time. Mm-hmm. Most #1 singles, all of that kind of stuff. And the thing about it is if you, and Dr. J and Michael Jackson have a very similar story in that they operated from a belief that said, I demand more from myself than anyone else could possibly expect. I demand more from me than anyone else could possibly expect. See, in our world, we get to see the end result of years and years and years of sowing and nurturing and sowing some more and nurturing and changing our approach. And we see the end result of all of that effort and all of that planting. What we tend to not see are all of the trials and efforts and challenges and redirects and failures and successes that went into building that external world. We didn't see what went into it, we just see the end. But there's a lot that went into it. But that made so much, that really resonated with me. So if I demand more for myself than anyone else ever expects, then even when I underperform by my own standards, I still outperform everybody else. Does that make sense? And it's a matter of conditioning. It's a matter of conditioning. But our team agreements are something you must hold yourself to first. You must hold yourself to first and hold yourself to the highest standard. There are actually in your workbook, there are some examples of suggested team agreements that we suggest to our teams to help them keep their context firmly in place. So here's one. I agree to open and honest communication. What does open and honest communication mean? What does open communication mean?
Individuals feel safe, so that a team member would not feel that their job is in jeopardy if they go to the doctor with a problem.
And if I take that to another level, to me, being open means no withholds. I don't withhold truth from you, and you don't withhold it from me. That if something comes up that could present a barrier in our relationship, we handle it immediately. And we have the safety to do that. So open, I'm not going to withhold things, I'm not going to carry it around like a badge of honor for the next 10 years. I'm going to address it right away so that I can protect the sovereignty and beauty of this relationship. So open, and then it also says honest. What does honest communication mean? To me, honest communication means you will not shade it with your version of the truth. You won't shade it with perception. You won't shade it with so-and-so said this. That is the truth. Does this make sense? So-and-so said she wasn't coming in today. That is a fact. So-and-so called, she said it, that is the fact. Where we get off track is when we say, so-and-so says she wasn't coming in today, and I know what she's doing. She's holed up with that new man she's been seeing. And you know, her husband don't even know about it. But I know where she's going because I've been seeing her text message and her Facebook feed. I know what she's doing. She ain't sick. That's what I mean by honest. We're not going to shade it with what we perceive to be the truth behind, or the story behind the truth. Does that make sense? And we can create all kinds of shit in our heads. True or false?
That's so true.
Raise your hand if you're really good at creating shit in your head. Pardon the expression. But we are all guilty of it. We are all guilty of taking something so little and blowing it up to be this huge, enormous thing. And the bigger we make it, the harder it is to overcome. True or false? The bigger we make it, the more disempowered we become. True or false? So deal in reality and deal in truth. It's not your perception of the truth. We're not making. I agree to be responsible for creating value for myself in this office. That's a deep one. Tell me what you think that means.
Means you're there to do good things, not just there to do a job. Like you're actually going outside the box to make yourself valuable.
Yes. And that you also go out of your way to find value in your work. Like just as we give to our work gives to us too. If we're looking for it. Even if it's just for the people you get to surround yourself with or the patients you get to interact with, your work creates value for you. If for nothing else, it gives you an opportunity to live in your purpose. So we have to be responsible for creating that value. It's not going to come up and be like, that's not how it works. We have to see that. It doesn't just happen. Next agreement. We agree to support our team members in keeping their agreements. The first team member we have to make sure keeps your agreements is who? You. And by the way, doctors, you are a team member too. So these agreements are just as applicable to the doctor as they are to the team. So it is, when you are a team, there is no head and there is no tail. It's kind of like a circle, right? I agree to handle any complaints I have in an empowering way, and only to someone who can do something about it. That's a loaded agreement, isn't it? Because some of us say, oh, I can handle it. I can handle her. But most of us don't do it in an empowering way. So, in your workbooks, or I'm sorry, not your workbooks, but in your journals, go ahead and write down a commitment, I guess, as to after you and your team have sat down and decided what your future is going to hold.